So thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Kate Woodworth with the Kingsport Library, and the Friends of the Library is sponsoring these book talks. And today we have Robert Gipe. He has just written his third book in a trilogy. It's called Pop. And there's some information in the chat I'm sending out about how you can get a discount purchasing the book on the website. So do please feel free to take advantage of that. And all right, I think I'll just start with Robert. What got you interested in writing?
Well, I was involved in a theater project here in Harlan, where I live, and we did a play about OxyContin and the opioid crisis in 2003 to 2005. And got to see some stories that I'd helped collect and help turn into theater, performed in front of our community, and went from there to there's my brother.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my nephew, actually.
That's your nephew.
Yeah. Hey, Willie. And
How's
is
it going?
that Gary Billett also? Or is that actually, I know several Carrie B's. It might not be. Yeah, that's Carrie. Hey, how are you?
Turn things off. It's me.
Yeah. Well, so excuse me, guys. I'm in the middle of getting interviewed. All right, we catch up on things. So seeing that made me think, well, it wouldn't be completely self-indulgent to write up some of the stories that are in my heart. And so that summer of 2006 went to the Hyman Writers Workshop, the Appalachia Writers Workshop in Hyman, and been going at it ever since.
Well, that's cool. So you combine art and your visual art and writing. What does your writing process look like?
Well, just with a pencil and a notebook, and then you type it up, and then you print it out, and then you mark it up, and then you type it again until your deadline, and then you send it off. But I owe the Kingsport City Schools was really very important to my style. I got in trouble for speaking out of turn very frequently and started to draw these little people and let them do my talking for me to where only I could hear them. And that seemed to cut into how many times I got called down in class. And so it's part of my roots there in the model city.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this is the third book in the trilogy, but what inspired you to write this particular book, or really the trilogy itself?
I think one thing I was kind of interested in was the similarities and the differences between life where I grew up in East Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky where I lived. I think that there's a lot to talk about there. To be so close, to grow up so differently than a lot of my students. But in some ways with, being a Eastman child, and is very much in many ways like being a child growing up working for a coal company or in a coal town where the business and the civic life were pretty tangled up. And also, it's like I had been involved in some challenges to some coal mines in the late 90s, and then was, of course, there when OxyContin came into our community and caused a lot of damage to a lot of people and a lot of families, and was interested in my students at the community college where I teach and how they were navigating through kind of multiple crises, multiple traumas at once. And just kind of hit on that one character as kind of an exemplar of a lot of people I know. I just started writing it up.
So it sounds like the locations in the story really informed the work.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, yeah, I hadn't ventured too far afield. But we did get all the way over into West Virginia in this book, so that was kind of a book. This book used a lot more gas than some of the other books do, just to produce.
So when you're writing, how do you decide where to place illustrations in the story?
Well, that's generally I just put one wherever I wanted to kind of put a point of emphasis or to remind the reader that a person was speaking. I told a group of English teachers this one time that my father talked, he gave us lots and lots and lots of advice. It was fairly, it was good advice, but it was fairly constant. And so it wasn't always easy to know what was being emphasized except for the volume of his voice. But a lot of times he, as we became more and more impervious to his advice, a lot of times he would say, "Look at me," and we would look at him, and then he would want to make eye contact while he told us to do something or not do something, and that was kind of what was going on with the drawings too. One thing, I was always very interested in how the books are laid out, and so this time I did about twice again as many drawings as we needed for the book. And I'd always kind of wanted them to fit together in the book better. And so, for the pages to look balanced and things. And so I penciled about twice as many are actually in the book. And then as they were laying out the book, we made decisions together about how to place drawings. And so the lines would fit on the pages. And then I inked the ones that we decided on. That I probably shouldn't say that because anybody that's working with it, that was very indulgent on the part of Ohio University Press of their author, but it was fun. Beth Pratt is who worked with me at the press on that, and so that was hard. I mean, if the illustrations have to go in a particular place in the text as they do, getting the pages the page breaks to work out right is tough.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think they really add to the story. I love it. I mean, especially that they can really add a comedic element, but they can also kind of add a seriousness to certain moments,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and a primary literary influence being Mad Magazine.
Nice.
And Cracked magazine that of the 70s. They had all kinds of there was all kinds of like comedy going on in things that weren't in the main words and text, like people wearing t-shirts or signs in the background that kind of were a little extra fun, and I definitely enjoy that about putting the illustrations in and what the characters' t-shirts say and all that stuff.
They're like little Easter eggs for the readers.
Yeah, that's right.
We have a question from the audience. Why was the county name of Canard selected? If I'm saying that right, the definition of Canard is a fabricated report.
Yeah, I know. I wish I'd said it Canard because that's so much more Kentucky. Where Versailles is pronounced Versailles, and
oh yeah.
But actually, when I was young, I had written something where it never was published or anything, but the word Kingsport was Canard. It's also
Okay.
I also just thought it was funny that if it was Canard County, which is also French for duck,
Okay.
that their high school would be the Canard County Eagles. And then it's just based on it's just kind of a made up Then, of course, the other thing I had, a lot of the counties here are named after Revolutionary War personages, and I always thought there might be some historical novel about some hapless French general named Canard that would have lent his name to this county. That's about right.
That's wonderful.
Thanks. I've always been curious.
Yes.
Yeah, there's various naming things like that I notice. I mean, they're obvious. Like, my dad worked for George Chemical, that's for sure.
Well, that's completely fictionalized. That
Yeah.
has any similarity to any companies living or dead is purely coincidental.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like, though, that does play into some of the, almost the class differences that you're showing there with, Kingsport versus, being in Kentucky. You do see those discrepancies. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm probably of an age with Dawn, and yet our, experiences growing up were very different, both being in the Appalachian area.
Yeah, I mean, of course, one of the things that I learned after I moved here is that a lot of people I knew in Kingsport had come from southeastern Kentucky and of course, obviously, Southwest Virginia. I started to get a sense of that when I was in college and I worked at Eastman in the summertime and, just kind of got a sense of how many people lived in Scott County and Lee County and were driving down to work at Eastman, and and then here I got kind of awakened to the fact that a lot of particularly independent coal operators, just kind of family businesses, were selling coal to Eastman by the hundreds of millions of dollars. That some of my students were talking about contracts that they had, that their dads had, essentially selling coal to Eastman that were, stratospheric in scope. It was, well, did you all want me to read anything? I've got a little snatch of business prepared.
Sure.
Okay.
We can take a break to do a reading and then do more questions.
It doesn't matter. We can just whichever. It doesn't matter.
I'd say we can go ahead and do the reading so that people get a sense, if they haven't read the book, of what it's like.
All right. Okay. Well, so I'm going to do a little piece. I should do something about the boss chick since I've got two of them here. There's a notorious girl gang in Eastern Kentucky that I won't name who they are, but I see them in the crowd. But I'm not. I don't want to put them in that position. But the book's a lot about the idea of even Dawn's kids and what kind of Appalachia they're facing up here in the coal fields, and so I got interested in this kind of new food culture. People wanting to start restaurants that honor Appalachian culinary traditions, and also there was a movie made in my community while I was working on the book. It's a lot about East Tennessee and the coal fields and their connection. But in the piece I'm going to read you, there was a friend of mine who came from West Virginia and then was a radio personality, and so he comes to be in Canard County as a result of the Charleston water crisis, which is fictionalized in this book. And of course, that crisis was caused when a chemical used to float coal. It was a coal processing chemical spilled by the tens of thousands of gallons into the river there. And that fictional chemical was manufactured in a fictional Kingsport. And so anyway, so the speaker, though, is Dawn's uncle, and his name's Hubert. And he spent most of the series as an outlaw. And in this book, he's trying to go straight. So he's taking advantage. There's a four-wheeler park where people come to ride their ATVs in Canard County, and he's building some cabins and trying to cash in on this movie being made in the community. But anyway, so the section I'm going to read, it's kind of about all this. People are trying to make a community and trying to make a world and build a new economy and do their own thing in the midst of all these corporations that have a lot of power over their lives, and that the bosses and the miners and those are all people. And in this piece, they all go to Piccadilly. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Hubert. Usually when I am unsettled, it is because a family member or a tool have failed me, or because I've eaten food too heavily seasoned. But this was different. The Piccadilly of my youth had been darker, like a cave lit by torches. It was brighter now, but the heat lamps still glowed orange over the food. The trays and silver and plates still clattered. The cash register still beeped, but my head roared like flood water through a culvert. My eyeballs grew tight in their sockets. I stared into the faces of the men and the women on the far side of the serving line. Some were lean, some were stout, all held in place by apron strings and hairnets. A bony white man with droopy mustaches and a hairnet rising to a peak at his hairline poured a pan of peas and carrots onto the line as the firm hand of the serving woman stirred the new into the last of the old. Endless food, endless beeps from the register, endless people with money to pay. My father brought me to that cafeteria as a boy. It was the 1970s, and he had fallen in with men who sold coal to George Chemical. So much money flying, contracts worth hundreds of millions. We came to Kingsport to spend our sliver of it. More children in the Piccadilly line then, more teenagers. More people reminded me of me, but better off. Bright striped shirts, striped paints, long hair cut in styles. When I first came here and seen working people prosperous, I felt we could have that might be ours. But my father fell out with the men selling coal to George Chemical. He had to come back across the mountain and make his own way, make a market of our neighbors and their hard necessity. I come back from these reveries and found myself with a tray full of food standing at the beeping cash register. A woman handed me a glass of tea, used tongs to drop a lemon in it. The cash register woman handed me a piece of paper 9 feet long. I went for my wallet to pay the figure at the end of the ticket. The woman said through her nose, "Pay on your way out." I took my tray to the dining room. My people pushed tables together and moved chairs. Meals nearby was disrupted. When they seen Dot do it, the boys took their food off the trays and set all their little dishes on the table. Tildy asked, "Was I all right?" I said I was. She said, "I'll be right back." And a little Banny Rooster-looking feller came dashing past in a cloud of axe, down to where Kenny was sitting talking to Poet Sam. Banny Rooster slapped Kenny in the back of the head and said, "What are you doing, dumbass?" And Kenny jumped up and spun around, said, "Lord have mercy," and hugged the Banny Rooster. Said, "Did they let you out?" And they did a handshake, which involved bumping elbows and slapping each other on the hind end. Sam Haney talked to Prestone and Billy Wayne. He called someone he was talking about a flubby-dubby. And the Banny Rooster wheeled on Sam and pointed at him, his arms straight out, elbow locked, feet spread like a Roman centurion, a spindly gold chain and flip-flop wearing in the dead of winter centurion. He said, "I know you." Said, "You're that idiot on the radio. One making trouble for people never made trouble for you." He'd been talking about this chemical spill on the radio. Sam said, "You ain't making trouble for me now, are you, friend?" And Alvin said, "You need to shut your mouth, Buster." And Kenny said, "Alvin, all that work getting that restraining order lifted, you don't need this." And Alvin said, "I finally get a decent job, and now they're talking about laying us off because of this West Virginia water talk." And Louisa said, "We was minding our own business in West Virginia until you brought your mess, mister." The Piccadilly manager come over, asked if we needed refills on our drinks and if everything was okay. And Alvin said to the manager, "You all need to be more careful who you let in here. Something stinks." About that time, a man in a golf shirt and a V-neck sweater, big gold wristwatch come up. Man had dark hair, gray around the ears, teeth as straight as the Osmond brothers. He said, "Young man, where do you work?" And Alvin said, "The plank." Said it kind of belligerent. The man didn't bat an eye. He said, "What part?" And Alvin said, "Building 90." And the man nodded, and he took Alvin's ticket out of his hand. He said, "Everything will be all right. Do you understand?" And Alvin nodded, and that man said to Alvin, "You have a good weekend." And Alvin went back the way he come. And the man turned to us and picked up my 9-foot ticket and said, "Y'all have a good weekend." He left. And Dot, and she lives in Kingsport. She's Dawn's mother-in-law, said real low, "He doesn't need to do that." And Kenny said, "Sorry about that." And Billy Wayne ate the marshmallows from the sweet potato casserole, said, "Who was that?" And Dot sipped her tea, said, "He's a lawyer at the plant. His name is Cletus Broomholland." And Sam speared a Jello cube and said, "How do you know Alvin, Kenny?" And Kenny said, "I've been into it with Alvin since we was kids." Louisa took a bite of banana pudding and said, "I bet he keeps things lively." And Kenny said, "That he does," and tucked back into a scallop of potatoes. I got up and went to hunt Tildy. She was out in the parking lot, throwing up in a cooler in the back of the truck. She said, "Why I eat cooked onions, I have no idea." And I said, "You need to stay out here a while?" And she said, "No, I'm ready to go." I said, "You want to go? Still want to go to the garden store?" And she said, "Hell yeah. I'm going to get me one of them mix and mold kits with the letters where you can put your own inspirational messages on rocks and scatter them about your garden." I said, "Well, all right." And she said, "You got to leave something behind, Hubert." And I said, "Well, I support you in it, Tildy." And she gave me a nod and spit in the cooler. I went in the Piccadilly restroom and splashed water on my face. I stood looking at myself in the Piccadilly mirror. I thought about my old dad, all the people come to his funeral. I thought about Tildy, who'd come to me late in life, calmed me down, made me take my medicine, and helped me talk to people about my dark thoughts and lack of impulse control. I thought about Dawn and her struggles. I hoped I could be of use to her. Nicolette, such a delight. I wanted to be something good for her. I thought about all of them. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, standing next to me in the mirror was the Piccadilly manager. He said, "Sir, you reckon your party might be about ready to go?" I said, "Now what?" He said, "There's a woman in your party handing out pamphlets about water quality to the other diners." And I said, "Kind of orange-headed?" And he said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "That ain't allowed." He said, "Well, some patrons are finding it off-putting. Some left in the middle of their dinners, and some that don't never fill out customer feedback cards are filling out customer feedback cards." I said, "Putting them off their feed." And he said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "Do you like it here?" And he said, "It's a job, sir." And I patted his shoulder and went out and told Prestone and Billy Wayne to gather up all the customer feedback cards and meet me at the truck. We left out of the Piccadilly and went our ways, and me and Tildy went to the garden store and got her rock mix and went and sat by the river and shared a dip of snuff and watched the sun glint off of the water and the steam plume of the plant. I took Tildy's hand and said, "Could be worse, couldn't it, Tildy?" And she gouged me in the ribs and said, "Oh, you're a fortune teller now." And whether I was or wasn't depends on how you look at what comes next.
Yay! I'd have to say I thought Hubert really was a breakout star in this one. He really, I think he was making some of those changes he was trying to make.
Well, the past is a hard time thing. I heard a politician say this in Letcher County one time. The past is a hard thing to overcome in a short time.
Yeah.
But he's doing his best.
Yeah, he had a monologue later in the book in a cave, and I was just really, I was kind of moved by that.
Yeah. Well,
Without
he's
giving much away.
he, like myself, is trying to confront his own toxic masculinity and, make the best of it. Well, not the toxic masculinity
Well,
of what he's got to work with.
Right. Yeah, I found that refreshing, really, his kind of change of pace, change of character. So, throughout the trilogy, there's really some funny moments and also a good deal of trauma how do you balance these moments when you're writing?
Well, I mean, my friends in Kentucky, well, and really everywhere, that humor is really a part of the way a lot of people keep from, becoming desperate in the face of trauma. That some of the funniest people we know are some of the most, woe beset. So really, I think that, I was also very interested in kind of false fronts and the way people use humor to deflect their pain, to keep people from asking them about it and dwelling on it. And so it's really they're very entwined in a lot of people. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend. There's a very interesting. I won't even call her a comedian performer. Her name is Hannah Gadsby, and she works this into her performances a lot. This idea that we train ourselves to turn things into a punchline, so we don't have to get to the end of the story or the bottom of the story. And she's got her kind of breakout piece was called Nanette. And then she's done a second one that's called Douglas, but they've been on Netflix is where I saw them.
Yeah, almost the
Talk
concept
about
of
that phenomenon.
yeah, almost that concept of gallows humor and laughing so we don't cry.
Exactly.
Another thing I noticed when I was reading this book, especially when they were talking about the movie people coming in, was the people from this area wanting to tell their story and represent their region.
Right. Well, when you're in the professional Appalachian business, you get asked about different writers who say different things about the place, and sometimes people don't. Anyway, and there'd been a particular one who I don't care to give any more attention that we get asked about a lot, and so I was this is kind of what I had to say about that, and but yeah, so and and of course working at Apple Shop, which since the end of the 1960s has been about making documentaries and radio and theater about Eastern Kentucky and the coal fields and Appalachia generally from within the region, and unapologetically talking about what's going on here, regardless of what may have been said about it before. And that was really my first job full time, and very, very influential in that way. So I think for me, it's just this is just telling the story I have, not because I feel like some stories are wrong or or some stories haven't been told. It's just, I grew up, just trying to be entertaining and trying to be truthful and trying to do something that was helpful for people, and not really trying to represent some place in some way that, it's like, I feel like having a good time and telling stories properly is intrinsically rewarding, and and then you can figure out how the rest of it works as you go. I didn't set out with any axe to grind about the way anybody else had done anything. It's more celebratory.
Just putting the authentic voice out there and letting people hear it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that how authentic it is, really, to tell the truth. It's like it's funny how if people enjoy it, they'll call it authentic, and
Yeah.
when they don't enjoy it, they think it needs some work, and so yeah. But anyway, I don't know. It's interesting. It'd be interesting to have like a real linguist to analyze it or something, somebody that actually had been paying attention to what people really say. So
it's hard for me. It felt authentic to me, but that can be hard to judge because, like I said, my experience was different because I come from a place of privilege that I very much recognize. So some of the day-to-day experiences are not something that I've had to deal with oftentimes.
yeah.
Speaking of, the region, you portray a good deal of political diversity in the area of this country, and through the different characters. Do you think that people might find this surprising?
You'll just drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what people think. It's like, there is a lot of diversity. I think one of the things I dwell on is, think about a lot is, the various shifts in political orientation of communities as a whole and how those come to be. When I came to Eastern Kentucky in 1989, they had, a super liberal son of a New Deal, Great Society politician for their congressman. But of course, we had 7 congressional districts then, and now we just have 5. And so but then things have changed. The parties have changed, and people have realigned with them. Every place is not as consistent as Upper East Tennessee, which, we had the same congressman for a long time. I guess he's gone now, but it's like the people in East Tennessee have been fairly consistent in their voting behavior. But here, there's been some shifts in the last 50 years, and just thinking about that, and not in any really, and obviously I have my political orientation, but just how these tides ebb and flow and how things change is something I'm very interested in. And and politically, these are the people I run around with. It's like I know they exist, and I think that we've been portrayed a bit monolithically, and so give them something to chew on anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. There are some stereotypes of the region and the concept that everybody's kind of the same. That definitely comes to the front, and with it being a book set in 2016. So, what outcomes would you like to see for Dawn and Nicolette and the people of Canard County and the area?
Well, the only one that I control is I think I'm going to leave them. I like to see them be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
To pursue
Right.
without me writing up everything they do. Let them get on with their lives. I won't give away the ending, but it's pretty clear. It's like I wanted it to have a good reason for being over. I think they'll be all right. I think I tried to get them to where they were talking plainly to each other and listening to each other before I let them go, so that they could probably take care of themselves from here on out. I think they'll be all right. It's shifting tides. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what to wish for anybody at this point?
Yeah. What did you learn when writing the book?
That's a good question. That having a book takes up a lot more time than I ever imagined. That that so much of the work came out of my community and my engagement with that community, and then having the books, and being raised to, if somebody asks you for something, that you try and oblige them. Like if somebody asks you to come on a Google call, you try and oblige them. That you just treat them right, and that you can. It just takes you away from your community, and I would have thought that I could have just handled that, but I would say don't write a book unless you're sure you want to have a book. Because if you do any kind of a good job, you get asked to come and read out of it, and really, I'm hoping that will persist with this pandemic, doing these things and never having to leave. I wouldn't mind going somewhere every once in a while, but it's like it has really been good on my back. It's been good on my relationships to not have to drive everywhere to do these events for people. But I'll tell you though, it's also extremely cool to have a few Kingsport people, but then I see people from 10 or 11 different counties here, you
Wow.
know, and I think that's good. Yes, Karen. Karen just piped in with, are we still doing our higher ground productions? Yes, we are. These are oral history based musicals that we create ourselves here in Harlan County, and we're on our 9th one. This will be the first one since I have semi-retired. We've got all new staff. Carrie was one of our former. She's a playwright. She was in playwright for the 5th one, and then Krista and Melissa here. They were the host of the 8th one in their restaurant in Corbin. But yeah, we're doing one that's about. We had a Black Lives Matter rally here in Harlan in early June of 2020, and that had a bunch of fallout. And then also taking up the history of the very vibrant Black community that was kind of pulled out from under people in the 70s, and then with the 77 flood, never got built back, and kind of connecting those two events. And also looking at COVID and people who believe it's real and people who don't, and talk about policing. I mean, you know, it's another light musical moment for Higher Ground. We're just talking about what's going on here, and that'll be April 23rd and 24th, and April 30th and May 1st, and we're going to be doing it outdoors. Kind of like a drive-in with some of the actors on screens and pre-recorded, and some of the actors on live on stage. But we're real proud of ourselves just for doing something. I mean, this has been a very difficult time for theater. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Karen.
Yeah, the arts have been particularly hard hit with the pandemic.
Yep.
So, what are your next projects you're wanting to work on?
Well, I wouldn't care if I didn't have a project. I'm getting more peaceful with the idea of taking a break. You know, I'm increasingly sensitive to, you know, how to put it, that every writer takes up some space, and who needs space it is and getting it, and who's got space that maybe doesn't need it. But that's had a big impact on me in the last year, just this idea of who gets heard and who doesn't. And so yeah, I mean, that is no small part, that just that feeling of any bandwidth I take up is a bandwidth that somebody else doesn't get. And so taking a break is a conscious act, really, and helping this next generation of higher ground artists is important to me, and supporting other artists. And I know that one of your questions on the list was that has to do with what I'm doing now. And I've gotten very much more interested in history, and like thinking about, you know, how we got to where we are in this country today. And my partner Amelia Kirby gave me the Indigenous Peoples History of the United States that I read over Christmas, and you know, the namesakes of my grade school and middle school did not come off well in that book, Andrew Jackson and John Sevier.
Yeah.
And just kind of reckoning with that, and then you know, just reading a lot more about the kind of very early history on this continent of African Americans, and but then like kind of cross-referencing that with some family history stuff my mother left behind, and kind of thinking about, you know, my people in the context of some of the displaced people and oppressed people that were, and really, you know, just kind of the role of disenfranchised white people and how all this stuff got figured out. So doing that pretty consciously, but I don't really have a project attached to that.
Sometimes just reading is good. I know I just finished Cast by Isabel Wilkerson.
I'm reading that right now.
Yeah, it's good.
That's yeah, I highly, is it, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have a happy ending.
Well, no, no, it's since it's nonfiction.
It's an excellent book. You know, that book has made me think a lot. Having gotten more into history, that book is so readable.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking about what makes one book more readable than another book. But didn't you find it so?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I listen to the audiobook. I do a lot of audiobooks, and it flowed really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, for those of you that that's funny because I was going to mention it today. It looks at race in the United States through the lens of caste, and it looks at India, and it looks at Nazi Germany, and looks at the United States history of treatment of African Americans and Native Americans, not less about race, but looking at that as a caste that's kind of impossible to escape.
Yes.
But anyway.
Looks like Karen had another question.
Talking about Dope Sick.
Yes.
So Beth Macy, been in Roanoke a long time. She's a journalist, excellent writer. And when heroin hit in Roanoke, in the upper middle class suburbs, she started covering the story. And that kind of took her into how OxyContin and prescription opioids created a lot of addiction in not just Roanoke, but in farther in Southwest Virginia. And so she ended up in Pennington Gap, looking at the work of Art Van Zee and Sister Beth Davies and Sue Ella Kobach and all those folks, and looking at the U.S. attorneys in Abington that brought a case against Purdue Pharma and actually won, and wrote a book, and it's been very successful. And now she's writing a book about the best or the most encouraging responses to the opioid crisis. But anyway, so Dope Sick has been a big seller, and they're making a Hulu show about it. And she actually came. One of the things she was considering for one of the last chapters was to do a chapter about Higher Grounds, because we started off with an OxyContin musical in 2005, and when she was finishing the book, we were doing a play about needle exchanges and harm reduction that we were traveling with to different community discussions in Southwest Virginia. And but anyway, so she got me a gig as a script consultant, which I was supposed to make sure that their hillbilly cred was in good shape, that was stupid of them, but the money was good, so I just went and did it anyway. What was awful is, like, I don't know anything except how to ask people who do know things, and so we had to sign this super secrecy agreement that we wouldn't tell anybody. It was like Willy Wonka with Ray Slugsworth was going to steal the everlasting gobstopper or whatever. And but anyway, so, you know, it's like whatever I know about coal miners is because a coal miner told me, not because I know anything about it. And then they're asking me all these questions about hunting, and I don't hunt, but I know 50 million hunters. And so I finally just told them, I said, I guess because maybe one of the other streamers was working on something too, and so it was kind of a everlasting gobstopper type situation. They were trying to see who'd get done first, and I said, "Look, buddy," I said, "nobody's going to be talking to anybody at Netflix here because I think there's about 5 people with a Netflix subscription in Harlan County, and everybody's borrowing everybody else's password. Nobody's going to talk to Netflix and tell them anything." But they're shooting it now. Right? They're up in Richmond, Virginia, trying to turn it into Pennington Gap. I hope it turns out. But anyway, here's the thing I learned about that. Being a consultant, just because they ask you what you think doesn't mean they're going to do what you tell them. And so if you like it, yeah, that was me. And if you don't, I was just a consultant. Yeah.
Would you have any advice for aspiring authors?
The best advice I ever heard for an author was don't write unless you can't not write. Unless it's really burning you up, just leave it alone. Just do something else. And if you do take it up, get a community, get with other people who have the same affliction, and help each other. I mean, my primary sources of community have been the Mountain Heritage Literary Festival at LMU in Harrogate, and then the Appalachian Writers Week at Hyman Settlement School. And then the other thing is put yourself out there. Find places where there are open mics, or get in a writing group and write stuff and read it to people, right? So that you hear what's working and what isn't working, particularly with other writers, because they know how hard it is and they're not going to be too hard on you. And it'll help your courage. It'll also help it, be more resonant with readers. I was listening to, I think Carter was on here a little bit ago. I was listening to a panel. Carter Sickles, a fine author of The Prettiest Star, which just won the Southern Independent Booksellers Award for Best Novel in the South this year. Nice. And I was very interested in the panel he was moderating, which is about a new series that the University Press of Kentucky is getting ready to put out, looking to bring more books written by queer Appalachians, African American Appalachians, indigenous people in the region, Latinx writers, etc. One of the people on their editorial board is Davis Shoulders, who's fixing to open a bookstore in Johnson City, and had worked at Union Avenue Books in Knoxville, just talking about booksellers and how these brokers that bring books to bookstores talk to booksellers about what books they want. That was fascinating. And there's Mandy, who's got a bookstore. She just opened in Hazard, the Red Spotted Newt. We order from them a lot. But the just the idea of understanding the ecology. I mean, it's easy to be in your own head when you think you've got a book in you, but to be clear-eyed about, what publishers are thinking and what the universe of publishers is, and educating yourself about that.
Well, that's really cool. I like to hear about marginalized voices being elevated.
Yeah. So do the marginalized voices.
Yes. I see it more and more right now, which I hope to see more of it. Well, is there anything else you'd like to speak on about Pop or your other books?
No, not necessarily, but I'd be glad to talk with anybody if anyone else had anything to say or
sure.
Questions. It seems like it's pretty wide open here.
Yeah.
Talk about how you decide to write a trilogy.
Well, I think I always kind of knew that was as many books as I wanted to write in the beginning, and of course the story I've been telling is true. But I was in this novel writing workshop that Darnell Arnault, who until recently taught at LMU, taught, and you worked with her several weekends for over 18 months. And she asked us to visualize all the books we would ever write and name them, because most of us were older and were working full time while we were writing. And so it was part of, she was into stuff like that. positive visualization of your career. And so I just thought up those three names, and then I just used them and just started, well, why would a person name a book called Pop? You know, why would a person name a book called Weed Eater, and work backwards from the titles? I mean, I had things I wanted to write about, but. Kate Edgerton threw something up there.
Yeah. She was saying she really loved Pop. Nice to get back in the sound of those voices because she's in California now. Nothing sounds the same. Yeah, I'd imagine.
What are you doing in California? You hanging up?
I was teaching at Berea. That's where I got to meet Rob and got to know him. My dad died real suddenly, and I needed to come out here and be with Mom, so we picked up, and I'm in Central California.
Wow. Well, oh, she's gone.
Oh no.
Kate actually had some of the students that were working with us in class at Berea. You know, she had one of the original inspirations for Dawn in class.
Oh.
But yeah, so she knows what they sound like. Well, anybody else? Hey, Deborah, how are you doing? Hey, good to see you.
Oh, I'm loving your book.
Good. Can I tell my story? Is the statute of limitations run out on my favorite story about you?
No, go for it.
I won't say it was Deborah. It's somebody that reminded me of Deborah. Brought a library book to a book signing. And I said, is this going back to the library? And she, because it was none of my business. I just needed to know who to address the inscription to the general reading public of the community involved, or to Deborah. And she said, no, I don't think it's going back. But then I later heard, and you may not be at liberty to say, Kate, but that librarians kind of like it when books get stolen, because they feel like their jobs, you know, it's meaningful, that people would think enough of a book to lift it. And it's been very gratifying, the number of librarians I've had tell me how many of my books have been stolen from their libraries. I really feel like I'm reaching my target. I was in some interview, and the woman asked me, so how do you know you're reaching your target audience? And that was the story I told about hearing about them getting stolen. I said the two things were, my other favorite compliment as a kid said, he read it in detention.
Yes.
That's when I felt like I had reached market penetration. But anyway, sorry to do that, Deborah. No, it wasn't you. It was somebody like you.
Rob, I ended up pre-ordering 2 copies of Pop, and I'm sending one back to Kentucky. It's on its way right now. So,
all right.
Got to spread them around.
All right. Well, feel free to do it again.
Happily.
Yeah. Don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. That's what Jim Webb used to say. Anybody else? Willie, you got any questions you want to ask in front of everybody? He's one of my harshest critics.
I don't know about that. What which of the 3 books was toughest emotionally to write for you?
I really think this present one, because I did feel the least. I wasn't there every day. You know what I was saying earlier about traveling a lot, supporting the books, and you're not there every day. I felt like, you know, I didn't know as well what people in the community thought and were up to, and that made it harder. You know, you just weren't. I wasn't teaching every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. The first book, it's all very exciting, but then it got a lot harder. You know, just being gone for the way I wanted to live. And I never would have anticipated that. I mean, because I was pretty sure I wasn't going to end up, like Pink Floyd in The Wall. I had seen Pink Floyd The Wall, and so I knew that artists can get alienated and shave their eyebrows off, and there's a lot of problems. But I didn't think it was going to be like that, because I predicted my level of exposure. That was pretty much true. But anyway, even within that, just getting separated like that was tough. Thank you for your question. Hello, Mr. Todd.
How you doing, Robert?
Pretty good, buddy.
Hey, I got a quick question for you.
All right.
Have you ever thought about writing a book about your experience at Wake Forest with all your Dobbins Bennett alumni?
There's a book there that they put us all on the same hall. They thought we were friends. And that's how big Dobbins Bennett was. We didn't hardly know each other. And
Right.
if we did, weren't really that crazy about each other. I remember the first Kingsport person I walked up to at Wake Forest said, "What the hell are you doing here?" We didn't even know one another was going. I think they put us together thinking that would be a survival strategy, and then it just turned out, because we hadn't hung out together and we started creating mischief together, everybody had these non-overlapping skill sets, and we were able to really kind of exponentially increase the amount of mischief we were able to generate. And no, I've got better sense than that. What happens in Winston-Salem stays in Winston-Salem.
I got you. I thought I'd just ask, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, proud of what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Love the books.
Thanks, man.
I know I'm sure grateful that social media wasn't a thing in my youth.
No, they're ridiculous. I think that at some point it's just not even gonna matter what you did, because they're not gonna be able to find anybody to do any job that doesn't have felonies on their social media.
Oh yeah. It's like people talking about not wanting to get into politics because of having their background investigated.
In 20 years, that will become a thing in the past. No, we will live to see the eradication of shame. We're so far down that path already.
For good or for ill.
Yeah. Well, okay. Anybody else? I forget I'm not teaching and I don't need to call on people.
My child ate my homework.
Rob, how did you decide that social media was going to be Dawn's challenge?
Just because I see it, I think that, I think that Dawn's kind of temerity and kind of brazenness and courage was a part of her defense against the fear she had of her own weakness. That she was always kind of acting tougher maybe than she was, and that that at some point in all of this she retreated. She got kind of overwhelmed, and and I know this was a hard stretch for me. It is a hard stretch for me. I've taken a lot of what's happened politically the last 5 years very personally, just that some of the things that I never would, and it even goes on further back than that. My mother's gone now, but I'll say it, she voted for Obama, and she had a lot of friends that gave her a very rough way to go. And I saw it, and I saw what it did to her, and I would have never have thought I would have never thought that people would be that angry with their neighbors over that. And I think that got done. I think that, one of the things that's happening in this book is that she couldn't keep up that front for 3 books. And, and I think that was real. And so there she was. And I've seen this too, that, that it's difficult for parents when they're at the end of multiple generations of a lot of negativity to maintain positivity for their kids. And those kids, the world is fresh. Nicolette is she's been lucky to be relatively unburdened by much trauma. And, so that's part of her struggle, right? Part of it was, is Dawn going to become like her mother and kind of lose it and become a victim? And so, that was one of the bigger questions. Does this repeat another generation? Well, if we run them all off, has everybody had their fill? You're welcome. All right.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Hey, I was going to wait and see how many people are here before I did this, but I've been hand drawing book plates since we can't do signings, like do a little drawing. And so, given the limited number of people here, I am willing to do that. If you, Karen, if any of you guys want to contact me, I'll make you a book plate. Let me know where to send it. That's been pretty fun, actually. Just I've been using mailing labels. It sounds fancy to say a book plate, but anyway, let me know, because I talked to the publisher and they said they were making up some book plates I was going to sign. But for being here tonight, as a consolation prize, you'll get a hand drawn book plate if you want one.
Awesome.
And if you want to put it in a book other than mine, just let me know, and I'll sign it as the author of whoever wrote the book you want it in. All right, y'all. Muchas gracias.
Yes, thanks for coming.
All right. Y'all get out of here before I call on you. Does anybody else want to say anything before we go? It's not my show. Okay, did you have other things? Did you need to make announcements about?
No, just there's that discount that I put up in the chat for those that attended that still haven't bought the book or want to buy another copy for a friend. So thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah. I spent many a happy hour in the Kingsport Public Library.
Yay.
We had very functional air conditioning. And I always remember if people just came in there because they didn't have any place to take a nap, the public library people would always put a book under them. So it looked like they were reading, and I always thought that was awful cool. I'm very proud to be from Kingsport when I was in the public library.
Thanks.
I hope you're still nice like that. That's a long time.
Things are a little bit different with COVID, but
Right.
Right. We're ready to get back to normal.
All right. Well, so long.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Robert.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's good to see you again.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hi, Robert. Thank you.
Bye-bye.